everyone. Welcome back to another short little lesson today on freedom of speech. This is a continuation of our civil liberties unit. And freedom of speech, and I'll make this short and sweet. There are so many things involved with, what you can say, what you can't say. The whole conversation we had about, none of these are absolute. Speech being one of those. I think what you guys brought up in class was you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, can't yell bomb on an airplane. Those things are absolutely true. But this goes back, and so we'll go back to the beginning of this, make this quick for you. One of the most important cases that we look at with freedom of speech is Schenck versus the United States, and this was in 1919, right at the height of World War I, when World War I was going on, and he looked at the draft. And Schenck was a socialist. He was, this anti, laws that forced you to coerce you to do something. And so his argument was with the military draft that was involuntary servitude or slavery based on the 13th Amendment. So he was going around telling people basically to not, join the military. That, it wasn't fair, you couldn't coerce us to do this. And so by trying to convince people to not join the military, the government, of course, he was arrested and said, you can't do that. And this went all the way through the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, freedom of speech is important, and it is a civil liberty, but you can't get in the way of the war effort by telling people not to go into the draft. So he was arrested under a law called the Espionage Act, and ends up going to prison. He appeals, and they said, no, you can't do that. If what you say poses a clear and present danger, and that clear and present danger doctrine was used, from that point forward all the way, through the 1930s, 1940s. Other cases, started to chip away at that, which we'll talk about at the end. But the clear present danger test was that initial test that they put on there. If you have right to say stuff, but if it poses a clear and present danger. So the Schenck case is one of the required cases by College Board, so I'll have you guys write that one up. A case that followed this was Gitlow versus New York, and this was in 1925. Another important case dealing with, can you speak out? And what Gitlow was doing is he was actually advocating for the active overthrow of the U.S. government because of its involvement in World War I and in world affairs. So he was passing out these left-wing manifestos that say, proletariat needs to rise up in revolution and get rid of the bad guys. So he was arrested, and what ends up happening in that case is, he actually loses his case in district court. He appeals to the state of New York, loses that one. And then it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was the lower court's ruling was upheld there as well. So he ended up losing. But what this case did, there was another one before this where they came up with the bad tendency doctrine. And if what you say causes somebody to have to do something wrong or to do something have a tendency to do something bad, then you can't say it. But it did reinforce, it did incorporate speech and press into the state of New York and thus all of the states. But what they said was, yes, you have freedom of speech, but during wartime, it can be curtailed a little bit for the good of the nation. So even though he lost his case, speech and press were incorporated in the states via the 14th Amendment's due process clause. So those are two early cases. Obviously, Schenck's going to be the one that I'm going to have you guys write up. Other examples, Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969. Here was a situation where you had a Ku Klux Klan leader, basically, in their marches, burning crosses and all that stuff, talking about, these people need to die. So, civil rights leaders, obviously, the big ones of the day, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, all those people. And so he basically advocated for their death. So he was arrested, all the hate speech, and he appealed it saying, hey, freedom of speech, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, he has the right to say that, and they came up with this clause, imminent lawless action. And the court basically justified what he was saying. Did it really entice people to actually go kill these civil rights leaders? And the court said, no, it didn't show imminent lawless action. So he can say it, and he can say, I wish they were dead, but unless people look at it and actually what you say causes somebody to go out and break the law, then it's protected speech. We can argue, the merits of that case, but like we said when we were talking about the Phelps case, right? just because you disagree with what somebody says doesn't necessarily mean they don't have the right to say it. So the court did uphold his First Amendment rights. Now, the second case that we have to write up for College Board is Tinker versus Des Moines, 1969. This is in Des Moines, Iowa. And this is during the height of the Vietnam War. And what happened was you had these two kids, brother and sister, and they were anti-war, Vietnam War. So they came to school wearing black armbands. Now, this black armband basically was a protest of the Vietnam War. Well, obviously the school didn't like it. School administration didn't like it. So they were threatened with, expulsion. So the girl, the girl in the case actually did not wear hers, but the boy did. He's like, no, I'm gonna see this thing through. So he ends up getting kicked out of school. The whole thing, obviously freedom of speech goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And in this case, they did side with the students and said, even if it is in a school, as long as it doesn't cause a disruption to the educational environment. The court said wearing a black armband did not interfere with the educational environment, so therefore speech is protected. So this is a great case to discuss when I have you guys in class, because all kinds of questions come up with this. Well, what can we do at school if it doesn't interfere with the educational environment? So I mean, all kinds of things that you guys can dream up. And if you have questions about any of those, absolutely shoot them my way. Email is the best right now with all the tech issues we're having. So anyway, we'll write that case up as well. Case out of Texas. Can you burn a flag? Is burning a flag protected speech? And this one, of course, being in Texas, this was a huge deal. You had a guy, in protest saying, I should be able to burn an American flag, protesting what I see the government as doing wrong. He was arrested, for burning the flag. Goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, no, even burning a flag in protest is protected speech. So, those are some things, as we get into the 80s. So what we've done, if we've come full circle here, the clear and present danger test in Schenck basically has been replaced by the incitement test. We don't use the phrase clear and present danger anymore. More and more things that we can do in the name of speech than we could in 1919. But now it's the incitement test. And so basically the way what the law will look at is what you are saying, is it going to incite somebody to violence or to lawless action? So it's actually even easier to have free speech with this than it was with eminent lawless action. Because this one, you could say, well, it probably caused them to break the law. This one is, after you say it, they cannot prevent you from saying it. After you say it, if they can show, if the law can show that what you said did incite somebody to violence, then you can get in trouble for saying that. They can't prevent you from saying it in the first place. They can't shut down a rally. But if what you say does incite someone to violence, they can come back later and prosecute you. All right, so interesting cases there. Looking at the internet, because this is now what we're dealing with, and unfortunately, as newspapers start to die, at least the print edition. What are the rules on the internet? Is it and social media? Is it speech? Is it press? Is it what is it online? And as we go through and as we go forward, and we're going to see a whole lot of Supreme Court cases dealing with this. We've seen some already. But remember what we talked about with social media. If you are shielded from your government, with civil liberties, that was our definition when we first started this talk. Things like Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat, those are not the government. Those are private companies. So the question came up, and somebody asked me this question: can Twitter block somebody, or can Facebook not let somebody say something that they disagree with online? The answer is absolutely they can. They're a private company. They can do whatever they want to do. It's the government that you're protected from. So when people get all up in arms, it's like it's anti-democratic, for Facebook to block, they should allow all. And that might be your opinion. Maybe you think they should let everybody out there. But they're a private company, so they can block people. And is it speech? Is it press? We're talking about slander. We're talking about libel. These are all cases that are going to come up before the court dealing with social media. Okay, the last case for today, New York Times versus United States. This is a press issue, and what happened was the New York Times got a hold of some information classified information and published it in their newspaper. It's called the Pentagon Papers. And so it was a scathing report on what the government knew, what the government did. The Nixon administration, as they ramped up the war, going to Cambodia and Laos, and all the things that were classified, coming out of during the Vietnam War. They published these papers, and of course, immediately they were in trouble with the law because, and especially the federal government, because you can't publish things that are classified. And so the New York Times, obviously, we took this all the way to Supreme Court. Supreme Court took their case, and basically what it said, what the court said, was it sided with the New York Times. Is it classified? Can the government just say everything, you can't print anything because it's all classified? And the court said no. What they printed in their newspaper was classified at the time, but it didn't rise to the level of national security. So that's kind of where we draw that line. If it's going to, hurt the United States, then obviously you're not going to be able to print that. But what they printed was just things the U.S. had done wrong, or in their opinion, in the Times, their opinion is what they did wrong. So we'll also write up this case as well. So you'll get more in depth when we write this up. All right, so speech, easy stuff. Kind of wish I could, again, see you guys in person in class, get your questions. But if you have them, shoot them my way. And look forward to the next time we see you. All right, take care.